And joining us now for more on what we can expect when the president sits down with other world leaders at the G20, Nile Gardiner, director of the Thatcher Center for Freedom at the Heritage Foundation. So, Nile, you got Iran, Russia, China, so let's start with President Xi. Do you expect any significant breakthrough in trade, or can the markets be reassured just by seeing both leaders smile and shake hands and the fact that the talks on trade will continue?
Well, it's certainly going to be a very interesting G20 summit, Eric. I think that quite often these summits are quite meaningless, but this particular summit in Osaka, I think, is going to be very important on several fronts, including the China front as well. And the fact that Donald Trump is meeting with the Chinese president, I think, sends a clear signal that the United States and Beijing are interested in avoiding a full-blown trade war. And hopefully, I think, as a result of the discussions that you'll see later this week, both the U.S. and China will back away from the large numbers of tariffs that are being threatened at this time. I think that it's neither in the interest of the U.S. nor China to have a large-scale trade war. Tariffs certainly are hurting, or certainly will hurt, I think, significantly U.S. consumers, U.S. businesses. And I don't think there's a U.S. economic benefit at all from tariffs. But at the same time, of course, the U.S. has to maintain the pressure on China on other fronts. In particular, I think you'll see increased targeting of Chinese high-tech companies, such as Huawei, for example, sending a clear message that any Chinese attempts to undermine U.S. national security will be met head-on.
Well, there's a lot of talk about 5G, and Huawei has been, denying these type of allegations, but certainly the president will be blunt with his Chinese counterpart on the infractions that they are guilty of.
Yes, I think so. And I think that, the U.S. strategy in the coming months, I think, is going to shift heavily towards the targeting of Chinese high-tech companies that are deemed to pose a national security threat. Those companies, for example, that are involved in the Chinese sort of supercomputer industry. We've seen several companies identified by U.S. authorities in the last few days. I think that momentum is going to increase significantly. And I do think the United States is going to shift away from a blanket tariff approach, which I think is extremely risky for the U.S. economy at this stage. But at the same time, the United States has to maintain the pressure on China's high-tech companies, which are really just another arm of the Chinese regime. And Huawei in particular is extremely, I would say, dangerous to the United States on the national security front. Yep. They've also tried to infiltrate, for example, the British 5G network as well. There's a lot of pushback in the UK on that front also.
On the 5G issue.